This is Ideas Worth Exploring by Mark McDonald. If you've been wondering what to eat to stay healthy, turn up the volume and listen as I tell you about what constitutes a nutritious diet. Without beating around the bush, let us begin. Your diet can affect your energy levels, your mood, and your chances of getting sick, so it's important to pay attention to your diet and make sure you eat healthy foods. But what does that even mean? It's not actually possible to split foods into two neat categories, healthy foods and unhealthy foods. Instead, it's more like a game of Catan, where you have to gather resources in the right proportions, and different foods give different resources. That's the science of nutrition, and as we learn about it, we'll also find out how we lose weight by breathing out carbon dioxide, why polar bear liver is poisonous, and how malaria might be the original cause of heart attacks. Nutrition is all about making sure we eat the right amounts of the things our body needs, or in other words, nutrients. I'm going to divide the discussion of nutrients into macronutrients, the things you need a lot of, and micronutrients, which you only need a little of, but are still important. Macronutrients are fats, carbohydrates, and protein, and then some people also include water, fiber, and cholesterol. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals, and don't worry, there will be plenty of puns mixed in today. First, macronutrients. The macronutrients are 1, 2, 3, fats, carbohydrates, and protein they be. Fats, carbs, and protein. In the US and Europe, you'll see those three words on the back of any can of soup or box of Fruity Pebbles flavored oatmeal, because the government wants to make sure you get enough of them. Thanks, government. The big thing fats, carbs, and protein have in common is that they all provide energy for your body. We usually talk about it as calories. The number of calories on a food label means the amount of energy released when you burn it. That's not a joke. To measure calories, scientists put food in a closed environment, set it on fire, and measure how much it makes the temperature change. Food calories are actually measured by burning. So why does that work? Why does burning things help us know how much energy we'll get from eating them? Because when you digest food, you're also burning it. And by that, I mean digesting food is a combustion reaction, where food combines with oxygen to release energy. The same kind of reaction that happens when you burn things, just much more slowly, and in a healthy person without the flames. It turns out that the amount of energy you get from burning food is pretty similar to the amount of energy your body gets from digesting it. Cool. Oh, and another consequence of digestion being a combustion reaction, like all combustion reactions, the food gets turned into water and carbon dioxide. When you use up fat stores in your body, the fat gets turned into carbon dioxide and water. So when you go on a diet to lose weight, you might think that the weight is lost by pooping it out, but no, that exit is for waste and not for useful energy-producing stuff like fat. So except for a little bit of protein and cholesterol that's lost out your rear end, almost all weight loss happens from breathing out CO2 and water, which leads to my new wonder weight loss plan. Just breathe more. Alright, joking aside, our first macronutrient of the day is carbohydrates. Carbs are important mainly because they supply you with glucose, your body's favorite calorie carrier. Glucose is a sugar. The name comes from the ancient Greek word glucose, meaning sweet. Congratulations, you now speak a little bit of Greek. Glucose travels in your bloodstream to anywhere in your body that needs to burn it for energy. If your blood glucose level, also called blood sugar, gets too low, then your cells start to starve, and this can make you confused and drowsy, and if it goes on for too long, put you into a coma and kill you. Too high a blood glucose level is also bad, but it doesn't kill you as quickly. Normally, unless you have diabetes, your body is pretty good at maintaining blood glucose at normal levels. But if you eat too much sugar too quickly, it can raise your blood sugar faster than your body can handle, and that's not healthy. Glucose can be made very quickly in your body from simple sugars such as sucrose, fructose, maltose, dextrose, lactose, and galactose. Basically anything that rhymes with gross. These simple sugars are sometimes called bad carbs, because they get broken into glucose quickly and make you feel hungry again soon after eating them. They're bad mostly because they lead to overeating and weight gain, but eating them way too often can also give you diabetes. By contrast, good carbs, or complex carbohydrates, are made of many sugar molecules strung together in long, complex chains that your body has to work to separate. Your body takes longer to turn them into glucose, and this makes you feel full longer. Also, foods that contain complex carbs, such as fruits, veggies, and whole grains, also have more vitamins and minerals than other foods that only have simple sugars, so it's double good to eat your veggies. Also, if you eat a diet that's more than 60% carbs, it can make your liver think it's time to produce more cholesterol, which we'll see in a minute can be a bad thing. By the way, your body is also able to get glucose from fats and proteins, so it is possible to survive on a diet that includes almost no carbohydrates if you really want to. Such a low-carb diet could include vegetables and nuts and eggs and meats and seafood. I once met a guy who only ate seafood, but he always put his plate on the floor, so it took more effort to get the food to his mouth. He called it a low-carb diet. Feel free to groan. Our next macronutrient is protein. In a previous episode, I've talked about the molecules called proteins. A protein, as I said before, is a horse. In that proteins are the workhorse of your cells that do all the important jobs like providing structure, moving things around, making chemical reactions happen, sending signals around the body, and doing anything else you'd expect a horse to do. But there are thousands and thousands of proteins in your body. Do you need to get all of them from your food? What if you miss one? The answer is no, your body can make all the proteins it needs if it just has the right building blocks. All proteins in the human body are made of 20 different building blocks called amino acids. Amino acids, the meanest type of acid out there. Of those 20 amino acids, your body can make 11, but 9 of them have to come from your diet. When you eat protein, it actually is the protein molecules of plants and animals, but your body doesn't use them as is. It breaks them down into the amino acids they're made of, then it uses those building blocks to make its own proteins. Some foods have a relative scarcity of one or more amino acids, which can be a problem because amino acids are like Pokemon. You gotta catch them all. It's been said that this is why beans and rice are so commonly paired all over the world, because they each have a scarcity of one of the amino acids, so together they give you all you need. Except this leads to a myth that vegetarians and vegans have to carefully plan their meals to make sure they get a complete protein in every meal, which is not really true. As long as you don't eat the same thing for every meal, you'll generally have enough variety to get all the amino acids you need. And even eating just beans or just rice will generally still give you all the amino acids you need if you eat enough. So unless your whole diet consists of small quantities of a single food, you really shouldn't worry about combining proteins. There are 1,000 more important things you could be worrying about. Think of one of them instead. Our third macronutrient of the day is fat. We used to think of that eating fat made you fat. We no longer think that. Instead, it's the total number of calories you eat that makes you fat. If you eat more than you need, then the extra energy will get turned into a type of fat and stored in your body, and that's what makes you gain weight. The fat you eat only matters for weight gain in that it contributes to the total number of calories. The fat you eat is made up of building blocks called fatty acids. Yes, another acid, that's biochemistry for you. When you digest fat, your body often breaks down the fat molecules into the fatty acids they're made of, and those travel through your bloodstream to the parts of the body that need them. If you don't have a lot of fat in your diet, your body can make fatty acids from glucose, but there are a couple types of fatty acids, omega-3s and omega-6s, that your body can't produce on its own, and so you need to get them from your diet. One good omega-3 source is fish, so some people take fish oil supplements to make sure they get enough. Fatty acids can be saturated fat or unsaturated fat. What it means is this. Fatty acids have a tail made of a bunch of carbon atoms strung together. Carbon atoms like to be joined to hydrogen atoms if they can. If every carbon has 2 or 3 hydrogens, we call it a saturated fat. Saturated because it's saturated with hydrogens. It can't hold any more. This is the bad fat. If some of the carbons only have 1 hydrogen, we call it an unsaturated fat. Unsaturated because it's not saturated with hydrogens. It could hold more. This is the good fat. In foods, it's pretty easy to tell saturated fat from unsaturated fat because saturated fat is solid at room temperature, like butter, while unsaturated fat is liquid at room temperature, like olive oil. Unsaturated fat also has an evil twin, a subtype called trans fat. I won't go into the details, but basically trans fat is an unsaturated fat that got bent the wrong way. Ordinarily, unsaturated fats can get turned into trans fat if you fry it for a long time or do special chemical reactions. Trans fats were all the rage in the 1980s, but then they discovered that trans fats are really bad for your heart, even worse than saturated fat. So now, as of 2018, trans fats that don't occur naturally are banned in the US. But if you eat foods packaged before 2018, or some fried foods, they can still have trans fats in them. One final fat fact. You need some fats in your diet to help you absorb certain vitamins, otherwise they pass right through you. But the amount of fat needed for that might be very small. I just thought I'd mention it. Now, I brought up earlier that you don't really need to eat carbs. You can get all the glucose you need from fats and protein. I also mentioned that fat is mostly optional. Your body can produce all the fatty acids it needs except omega-3s and omega-6s. Does that mean that if you took omega-3 and omega-6 supplements, you could survive by eating only protein? No, you would get protein poisoning and might die. This has happened when during long winters, starving people would eat only lean meat such as rabbit and then get sick and die. Protein poisoning happens because when your body breaks down too much protein too quickly, it causes nitrogen compounds like ammonia and urea to build up in your blood. Your body can handle that in low levels, but if you go way overboard, like eating nothing but protein for months, then it can kill you. So be careful of those rabbits. Alright, that's it for the big three. Carbs are your body's main fuel. Protein resupplies your body with amino acids to build proteins, and fat is important for storing energy and absorbing vitamins. But in addition to fats, carbs, and protein, there are three more things that are sometimes considered macronutrients. These are water, fiber, and cholesterol. Do these contenders deserve the name of macronutrient, or are they just pretenders? Water. In my opinion, water should definitely be on the list because you die without it. It's true that water doesn't have any calories, but you still die if you don't get enough of it. And before that, dehydration makes you feel tired and drained. You've probably heard that you need 8 glasses of water a day to stay healthy. That's now considered a myth. There's no hard and fast rule for how much water you drink. It depends on how much you exercise, how hot it is outside, the clothes you're wearing, and what you eat in your diet. But do drink water whenever you feel thirsty. Water is important. But, as the saying goes, you can lead a dead horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I'll stop beating it. Fiber. Fiber maybe deserves to be called a macronutrient because you might feel nasty or get sick if you don't eat enough, but you won't die without it. Fiber is technically a carbohydrate, but from a dietary perspective, it makes more sense to think of it as its own thing because you can't actually digest it. That doesn't mean it sticks around in your stomach for 7 years. It just means that it gets pooped out without providing you any calories. Fiber comes in 2 types, soluble and insoluble. Long ago, there was a yogurt commercial. The guy complains that there's no fiber in his yogurt. The girl at the store says, yes it is, it's on the box. And the guy says, so I have to eat the box to get the fiber? And then the commercial recommends a different brand of yogurt that actually has fiber you can see, where you don't have to eat the box. But here's the thing. You can't always see fiber. What you're used to thinking of as fiber, celery strands and apple skins and lots of other stuff that seems like it isn't digestible, is insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber is good because it fills out your poop and makes it more solid. Soluble fiber is often invisible, but it's still there. You don't have to eat the box after all. Soluble fiber is actually digested by bacteria in your large intestine. It feeds the good bacteria and keeps them healthy. For a happier large intestine, eat more fiber. It also does other good things like lowering cholesterol and stabilizing blood sugar. Don't ask me how because I don't know, just eat your fiber. Cholesterol. Cholesterol, in my opinion, does not deserve to be on the list of macronutrients, because your liver produces enough of it for you to live a perfectly happy life without ever consuming more. Cholesterol is a waxy, fat-like thing that your body uses to make hormones and do a bunch of other important things. So cholesterol is an important nutrient for a healthy body. It's just that your body can make it on its own. And yet, we usually think of cholesterol as being bad. When someone asks you, "What's up?" you can tell them, "My cholesterol," and they might even laugh. Because high cholesterol is a bad thing that's common enough to be relatable, and that contributes significantly to heart disease. But here's where it gets tricky. When someone says their cholesterol is high, it's rarely because they ate too much cholesterol. And also, they're not actually talking about cholesterol molecules, they're talking about something else called lipoprotein. Let me explain. For background, cholesterol does not dissolve in water, so it can't travel through your bloodstream without help. The help is called lipoproteins. Lipo comes from the Greek word for fat, and protein comes from an English word meaning protein. Actually, the etymology of protein is kind of interesting. Look it up if you like that kind of thing. But anyway, lipoprotein means fat protein, and they're like little balloons made of protein and fat that carry cholesterol around your body through your bloodstream. When we talk about cholesterol levels, it's really these lipoproteins we're talking about. And like everything in life, there are good lipoproteins and bad lipoproteins. The bad ones are bad because as they travel through your bloodstream, they sometimes get stuck to the wall of an artery and form a plaque. The bad cholesterol that does this is called low-density lipoproteins, or LDLs. When LDLs get stuck to the wall of an artery and form a plaque, it attracts more LDLs to that spot, and the plaque keeps building up and makes the blood vessel hard and stiff. Sometimes a plaque can burst and form a clot. If this clot blocks blood flow to your heart, you get a heart attack. If it blocks blood flow to your brain, you get a stroke. Heart disease is the leading cause of death worldwide, and stroke is the number 2 cause of death, so this is a serious problem. But it's not all bad news. You have a protector. The good lipoproteins are called high-density lipoproteins, or HDLs. They take cholesterol molecules from the plaques and move them to other parts of your body, like the liver, where they can get broken down. It's a vicious battle between HDL and LDL, and the consequences of losing could be a heart attack or stroke. Just like cows smoking marijuana, the stakes are high. Also, steaks and other red meats raise your LDL levels, which increases your chance of a heart attack. You might reasonably think that it's the cholesterol in steaks that raises your LDL levels. That would be a mistake. While there is a fair amount of cholesterol in meat, for most people, high cholesterol foods do not matter. There's only a weak relationship between eating cholesterol and blood cholesterol levels. The steak raises your cholesterol levels because it's high in saturated fat. It's weird, but the biggest dietary influence on blood cholesterol levels for most people is not the amount of cholesterol they consume. It's actually the fats and carbs they eat. So, if you're worried about heart disease, eat fewer carbs and less saturated fat. But some people are outliers and actually should avoid high cholesterol foods like eggs. If that's the case, then your doctor can give you advice that's more specific to your situation. Here's an interesting fact. Animals don't get heart attacks. It is extremely rare for a non-human animal to have a heart attack. That's a uniquely human failure that's hardwired into our genes. Research in the last 3 or so years has shown that a human mutation 2 to 3 million years ago left us vulnerable to heart attacks and strokes. This mutation prevents us from producing a certain sugar that, in other animals, prevents the cholesterol plaques from building up in their blood vessels. Why do humans have that mutation? According to the study, it might be because a malaria parasite that thrived in the presence of that sugar was so good at killing humans that we evolved to get rid of that gene to protect us from malaria, and that left us vulnerable to heart attacks. Malaria, possibly the worst enemy of humanity, is predicted to have killed around 10% of all humans who have ever lived. And in fact, it's not impossible that the number is much higher, even up to half of all humans who ever lived. And if you add in heart attacks and strokes to malaria's death toll, that number only increases. Okay, let's talk about something happier. Micronutrients. Micronutrients are nutrients you only need a little of to stay healthy, but that your body can't produce on its own. Micronutrients include vitamins and minerals. Minerals are elements from the earth that your body needs. Calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, magnesium, they often come straight off the periodic table of the elements. For example, salt is sodium chloride, 2 elements off the periodic table. Salt is a mineral in the geological sense because you can mine it from salt deposits underground, and it's also a mineral in the dietary sense because your body needs it to stay healthy. Though, like most things, too much is bad, and with salt it's really easy to get too much. Also, salt is pretty unique in that both geologists and nutritionists call it a mineral. That's not the case with all minerals. Most of the time, licking rocks isn't particularly good for your health. Though I'm not recommending it. You can lick rocks if you want to, just don't expect them to be high in potassium. By contrast, vitamins are more complicated molecules that contain the element carbon. That might seem like a weird distinction, but it makes sense from a chemistry point of view. In chemistry speak, molecules with carbon in them are organic, while molecules that don't have carbon are inorganic. Which is why I think it's so funny to see a food label that says something like organic table salt. Yes, it might be organic in the organic food sense, but in terms of chemistry, organic salt does not refer to sodium chloride. Trust me, it's a funny joke. What do you do if a nutritionist shows up at your door? You invite him in. In general, vitamins are things that our body could make, but through some weird reason, nature decided not to, while minerals are things that, even in a perfect world, our body could not produce without a nuclear reaction. I can't give you an exhaustive list of all the vitamins and minerals, because that would leave me exhausted, but I'll tell you some interesting facts and stories about a few of them. First, 3 minerals, and then 4 vitamins, and then we'll be done. Iodine. There's a butterfly-shaped gland in your neck called the thyroid, and it can get inflamed in what's called a goiter. In the 1920s, they discovered that goiters were caused by iodine deficiency. The solution was to add iodine to table salt, and it basically fixed the problem in the US. In other countries, especially the Middle East, iodine deficiency is still a big problem. This is true anywhere that iodized salt is not common and where there's not a lot of iodine in the soil. It's estimated that 1.5 billion people, that's a lot of people, are still at risk of iodine deficiency. Fluoride. In the 1930s, they discovered that tooth decay could be protected against by consuming fluoride. After much research, they concluded that the best way to apply this at a large scale was to add fluoride to a community's drinking water. Then, whenever you take a drink from the tap, it'll help protect your teeth. And when they did it, the number of cavities went down by at least 25% and probably more. Clickbait. Dentists hate this one trick. And so many cities began to add fluoride to the drinking water, in what came to be the most cost-effective intervention for dental health ever created. Today, almost 3/4 of US cities fluoridate their water and save on millions of dollars of dental bills. But what about that other fourth? What if you live there? Well, petition your city council to start fluoridating the water. But don't be too worried if you live in a place like this. If you brush your teeth twice a day like a healthy person, then you should get enough fluoride from the toothpaste. Not because you swallow the toothpaste. I am not recommending that you eat toothpaste, but just because it gets absorbed through your teeth. Also note that in some places, fluoridating the water is not a good solution. In some areas of the world, the water has way too much fluoride to start out with, which can cause spots on your teeth, so they need to filter it to take out some of the fluoride. And in other countries, fluoridation wouldn't help at all because the tap water is not safe to drink, which is maybe a problem that should be solved first. Alright, enough of that. On to potassium. It is common knowledge among Doctor Who fans, and also others I guess, that bananas are a good source of potassium. However, I kept reading on the internet that banana was no longer king, and that an avocado has more than twice as much potassium as a banana. And so I looked it up. And yes, an avocado has slightly more potassium per gram than a banana, but not nearly twice as much. So whoever said that must have been comparing a little banana to a big avocado, which is not fair. So in my mind, banana is still king of potassium. That's enough about minerals. Now for the ABCs of vitamins. A. Vitamin A is important for a lot of things, including vision, growth, and cell division. But too much of a good thing is still too much of a good thing. Polar bear liver contains so much vitamin A that it will give you a fatal overdose. One source online said that a single polar bear liver contains enough vitamin A to kill 50 people. So be careful about nomming on polar bears. B. B vitamins are important, but also kind of boring, so I'll skip them. Moving on. C. One of the great successes of dietary science was discovering that the disease called scurvy that made pirates, and also normal sailors, I guess, lose their teeth and make their skin turn yellow, is caused by not having enough vitamin C. Now, it had been suggested that citrus fruits could be a cure for scurvy, and a man named James Lind tested it by conducting one of the first controlled clinical trials recorded in medical science. Lind was a medical assistant on a ship in the British Royal Navy. What he did was take a group of 12 men suffering from scurvy, and he gave them different treatments. Some of them he had told to drink half a pint of seawater each day. Some of them he gave vinegar, and some of them he gave 2 oranges and a lemon. After a week, the ones who ate the citrus fruits had recovered, while the rest were still sick. That's because citrus fruit is high in vitamin C, which you don't get at sea, you see. So the moral of the story is that you should test your hypotheses, and also you should eat fruit every once in a while so your teeth don't fall out. And also, here's a joke. How does an underwater citrus taste? It tastes sublime. And last on the list, vitamin D. Almost 50% of Americans are vitamin D deficient and should be taking supplements. And the reason we don't get enough vitamin D is sunlight. You know how sunlight is sometimes called a nutrient in a cutesy sort of way? Well, it's actually kind of true. Your body turns cholesterol into vitamin D when exposed to ultraviolet light. So if you don't get enough sunlight, you might not be getting enough vitamin D. But also note that the same ultraviolet light causes sunburns and increases your risk of cancer, so there's a trade-off there. Also, wearing sunscreen reduces your body's ability to produce vitamin D, which could lead to a deficiency. But honestly, it's better to protect yourself from skin cancer by wearing sunscreen and just take vitamin D supplements. That way you get the best of both worlds. Okay, that's it. There are more vitamins, but I'm all out of interesting vitamin facts, so I guess we have to be done. In summary, eating fat doesn't make you fat, it's calories that do that. Eating cholesterol doesn't necessarily raise your cholesterol. It's carbs and saturated fat and trans fat that have more of an effect there. And you do not actually need to drink 8 glasses of water each day. You should really just drink water whenever you're thirsty. But, given all that, what's the takeaway? What should you actually eat to stay healthy? It's hard to say, it depends so much on what your health goals are, but here are some general rules. You should eat things that are high in unsaturated fat, like fish and nuts, and olive oil instead of butter. Eat fruits and vegetables and whole wheat bread to get complex carbohydrates and vitamins, instead of the simple sugars and no vitamins in candy and white bread. I hope it doesn't come as a shock to you that you should eat vegetables instead of candy. You should eat enough calories, don't starve yourself, but don't eat too many or they'll get stored as fat. Some people take vitamin supplements. If you want to, then go for it, but it's not generally necessary for most people that have a balanced diet. Except vitamin D. That's one that many people don't get enough of and should take a supplement. Oh, and drink water. Well, that's the end. Orange, you glad it's over? I know my explanations weren't perfect, but I hope you carry these nutrition thoughts with you through your week. I'm grateful that you stuck around to the end. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Peach. This has been Ideas Worth Exploring by Mark McDonald.